Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar today. I am Dr. Matt Pratt Hyatt, and I am a specialist in mold testing. I have been working in the mold field for close to 4 years now, but before that, I had extensive experience in toxicology and measuring of small molecules. So today we're going to talk about the whole story of whether or not you suspect that you might have mold, to what do you do about it, to from yourself all the way to your home remediation. We'll be focusing most on home remediation today. I'll be having other webinar later to focuses more on patient care. So I really wanted to talk about home remediation because when I've been doing consults for the last several years, I've talked to a lot of practitioners, and one of the biggest questions I have is, okay, I can handle the patient, but what do we do about their home or how they got exposed in the first place? And for a while there, I didn't really have a good answer for them. So, but then I started doing some research, and I found several good home remediation companies. And the Mold Pros, which is one of those, wanted me to come and they're sponsoring this particular webinar here, and I think that they're a great company. That's the reason why I was willing to come speak for them. So today we're going to talk about what are mycotoxins, what do I do if I suspect mold, how do you inspect the home for water damage, what do you measure mold and mycotoxins in the home and the residence, and what do I do if I find mold or mycotoxins? And obviously there's going to be mostly we're going to be talking about how you handle the home today. In one of my other webinars, we'll talk more about how to handle with patients. So mycotoxins, there is lots of different mycotoxins out there. They all differ in how toxic they are. There is a large discrepancy from one mycotoxin to other one. Like some ochratoxin or a lot of the trichothecenes, those are very toxic. And you have other ones like patulin here, which is not as toxic. And then the sources are quite a bit different. Like ochratoxin, you're going to find a lot in water damaged buildings. Patulin comes only mostly in this apple exposure. So there's a lot of differences here. Deoxyvalinol is mostly found in animal feed. It's more of a plant mycotoxin or a animal feed mycotoxin than exposure to humans, really. So what are mycotoxins? So myco is Latin and Greek, which means fungus in origin. And there's over 300 different species of fungus that can produce mycotoxins. Luckily for us, the ones that are trying to figure out which if you're whether you've been exposed or not, we don't need to come up with 300 different analytes here. There are a lot of these fungi produce multiple of the same type of mycotoxins. So if we use 10 to 15 to 20 different mycotoxins, it's really all we need to be able to measure all the mycotoxins that you're being exposed to. Exposure to mycotoxins can cause chronic health issues such as memory loss, fatigue, cancer, and multiple others. There's a lot of different symptoms that we come across, which is also difficult because one person could have completely different symptoms than the other person. So it's kind of hard to nail down that a person has mold toxicity because the symptoms are just so different from person to person. So water damaged buildings, toxics in, so this is a paper from the year 2000, and but it's still very relevant today. And it's just really showing that water damaged buildings can have a lot of different mycotoxins form in them, and a lot of different species of mold can form in water damaged buildings. But this paper really shows that it's maybe the changes in building material that's leading to our more mold exposure than we used to be having. You can see here, these are some of the older material here, like mineral wood, plaster, sand, or soil. these don't like really grow mold in them. But a lot of the things that like newer homes are being constructed with cellulose and gypsum, drywall, all of these like these are very like good like sources of growth for different mold species. So that's the reason why they're easy to get. That's one of the reasons why a lot of like newer homes have mold in them that's really like toxic to their inhabitants because of unfortunately these different in, materials that we're using nowadays. So this is not an all-encompassing list of symptoms, but these are some of the ones that I see over and over again. Fatigue, that's number one by far. Headaches, very common. Memory loss, you're going to see that a little bit more in the older population, like 60 plus. Nausea, vomiting, not very common. Abdominal pain, that's very common, especially when you get like the comorbidity that you get with some type of mycotoxins. Mycotoxins frequently lead to immune system to be inhibited, so that can lead other like opportunistic pathogens like Clostridia, other bacteria, Candida to like start growing in the gut, which then can cause abdominal pain. Cancer is very common because of the DNA damage, as well as a lot of mycotoxins mimic different hormones. So this can cause different cancers to pop up. Immune suppression, very common. Less good muscular coordination, which can lead to like Parkinson's-like symptoms, and disruption of sleep is still is pretty common as well. So we talk about mold, especially with like mold toxicity that people are being exposed to. There's really like four main families that you need to be aware of: Aspergillus, Fusarium, Penicillium, and Stachybotrys. These are the ones that are really you're going to see the most common, especially Aspergillus, Fusarium, and Penicillium. These three are by far the most common. Stachybotrys is still very common, but by far distant fourth there. And all of these ones produce like these like significant mycotoxins that you're going to see over and over again. The aflatoxin, which is like four main types: ochratoxin, veridin, varicarin, satrotoxin, isosatrotoxin, and gliatoxin. By far, the most common one that you're going to see here is ochratoxin. It's produced by Aspergillus and Penicillium, and it can affect the kidneys. It can cause inhibition of synthesis of proteins, which can disrupt DNA and RNA. It can inhibit enzymes in the kidney. And it's like mostly produced from water damaged buildings because the United States Department of Agriculture really keeps a very like tight monitoring of mycotoxins in the food supply. You're not going to see a lot in food. It will pop up occasionally, but they try to like monitor this fair. It's a almost it's a multi-billion-dollar industry of monitoring mycotoxins in food. Before, I wish we had as much monitoring in homes as we had in food. Ochratoxin is very nephrotoxic, can cause immune suppression, which you're going to see over and over again when I talk about lots of these different mycotoxins. Immune suppression is a very common thing that you're going to see. It's very carcinogenic, and it can cause neurological symptoms. Gliatoxin, probably the second most common mycotoxin you're going to see. It's produced by Aspergillus and Penicillium. It's a known immunosuppressive. It can inhibit the NF-kappa B. It can also inhibit neutrophil function. So this is all how it can cause your immune system to become repressed. A lot of these like other like compensatory or opportunistic pathogens like Lyme disease. A lot of patients that I see a lot of patients that are positive for Lyme but don't show any symptoms. It's really when they get exposed to something else, either like toxic chemicals or mold toxins or some other life event that causes their immune system to become repressed, that they really still like Lyme start taking hold. Aflatoxin, produced by Aspergillus. It's a class 1 human carcinogen, meaning that it has definitely been known to cause cancer, and it primarily attacks the liver. It can cause a lot of different health effects. Like almost all the mycotoxins, it's more toxic to children than adults. And the reason why this is that children don't make as much glutathione as adults do. And that's because of the genetic changes the liver goes through during adolescence. Um, you go from not really producing any glutathione as a child, and then through adolescent, you see genetic changes in the liver, which then allows the body to start the liver changes into a more detoxified organ. So this really occurs in adolescence. Aflatoxin can cause lots of mental impairments, abdominal pain, depression of leukocytes, headache, jaundice, trichothecene. So this is a big family here, and they can produce a lot of different mycotoxins. Now, the main four species that make trichothecenes are Fusarium, Stachybotrys, Trichothium, and Mycotoxin. Okay, so home remediation. So this is a question that I get a lot, and I didn't really have a lot of answers for people. So that's the reason I really wanted to do this webinar, and I'm happy that I'm like kind of like partnering up with the Mold Pros to do this webinar to help answer a lot of these questions for everyone. So there's a lot of good remediation companies out there, some not so good ones. The Mold Pros has really like got my like stamp of approval because I think they do a great job. That's the reason why I was willing to talk with them about them today here. So why are they better? Well, they have a really comprehensive testing at a competitive price. They have one of the lower prices that I've come across in the industry. They use really great technology. I mean, I really like it when people like try to like innovate and use the best technology that science can show them. And that's the reason why the Mold Pros are great at this. Less cost for remediation. I'll talk a little bit more about this a little better, but because of their better technology, you don't need to do as much tear out, which allows you to not have to like spend as much on the back end of solving your mold problem. So the Mold Pros focus on the 3 M's, which is moisture, mold, and mycotoxins. And I'll talk about how they like measure all of these in my next couple of slides. The first of these is moisture, and the Mold Pros do two main like ways of solving the moisture issue. So they are going to use like moisture meters, and they're going to inspect from the foundation of your house to the roof decking, up from the bottom all the way up to the top, making sure that they find wherever there is moisture, because moisture leads to mold. They also use infrared cameras all over the house to determine where mold could be, or where water damage could be occurring, where you could possibly have mold growing behind. So you can see like right here in this blue area, this is just indicating moisture behind the walls. So moisture is definitely going to lead to water damage and lead to mold growth and mycotoxin release. The Mold Pros utilize a lot of good labs for testing. One of the labs they use is real-time labs. They also use several other labs for testing. They really want to use these labs because they are the best at what they do and they have the fastest turnaround time. So why would you want to do testing? Well, someone in your house is exhibiting symptoms, fatigue, headaches, memory loss. So you want to test that person, test other people at the house, test the home, workplace, school, other suspected sites for mold and mycotoxins. You're going to want to treat the patient for mycotoxins and possibly for mold colonization. But then you have to like remediate the house. Without getting rid of the mold, the patient is going to become re-exposed and they're just going to have symptoms over and over again. Testing for mycotoxins in urine. The best places is done by real-time labs. They've been doing this for 15 years. They really have a patented way of measuring for mycotoxins. They have a panel here that looks at 15 different mycotoxins. The Mold Pros really like working with them because of their expertise in the field and their quick turnaround time. I mean, really, they're turning around results in 3 to 4 days, where some of their competitors are not getting the results back for like 2 weeks. That's really important when you're like trying to like figure out what's causing you to be sick and whether or not we need to do remediation of your home. So they can be there on Monday, send the results out on Tuesday, have results by Friday, so you can start doing the remediation as quickly as possible. So how does the real-time labs process work here? Well, they do a competitive ELISA assay, which has both, they have a pre-coded antibody, and then they're using the analyte from the patient, as well as a labeled toxin that they put in, and they compete against each other for the binding sites. And depending on how much of the binding is set up. So the less color you get means you have more mycotoxins. One other good reason why you'd use real-time labs is that their assay can allow you to like measure against modifications of mycotoxins. And some of these mycotoxins, the body is processing them out through both phase one and phase two detoxification. Like some of them are like 90% are being modified. So if you want to be able to measure these to show that you've been exposed to mycotoxins. So if you like build an antibody to an area that is not modified, even though the mass of it could be changed, you're going to still get a positive result. Unlike when if you were measuring through mass spec, a mass spec test won't be able to like measure a mycotoxin that's been modified. Mold colonization, the other like important avenue of this. So about 1/3 of mold patients are colonized with mold. That's from a paper that I published last year. Testing for mold DNA in the blood gives patients a definitive answer to colonization. And a lot of times it's covered by insurance. This is all done through real-time labs, their MicroDart procedure, which they've patented. They use blood, which then they spin it down into plasma, and then they do a DNA extraction. And then they use their DART PCR, where they do DART and dye. They can get results out to show like whether or not the patient has mold growing in their system. So then you have to get to the house. After you've dealt with the patient, you have to deal with the house. And dealing with the house is sometimes difficult here. So here's some mold growth growing here. And the mold pros really have a great way of. So they test for mold and mycotoxins, bacteria, volatile organic compounds, and other environmental toxins. So for one of the other process they do is mold spore testing. So they do surface and air sampling. These get sent out to another lab here, which they look under a microscope to determine which species of mold are being caught in the spore traps. But spore traps, sometimes molds are either like dormant or they're not releasing spores out into the environment. Their spores are getting trapped behind walls. That's the reason why you need to do another test as well called the EMMA test, which is really the best available test for doing environmental mold and mycotoxin assessment. And technically, it's two different tests. And the first half is measuring DNA for mold spores, and the second one is directly testing for mycotoxins in the environment. This is much better than the old ERMI test, which only tested for mold. This is really the ERMI plus. This is kind of like the ERMI Premier test, which both test for mold and mycotoxins. Any spore count is determined significant, and it's created for clinical association, which ERMI was only corrected by the FDA, really to only like search for. It was only supposed to be for like research purposes only. It's never really supposed to be a commercialized test. So components of EMMA, what is it we looking for? So we're looking for the DNA side, you're looking at 10 of the most common human pathogens. On the mycotoxin side, you're looking at 15 of the most common mycotoxins. So these are some of the molds that you're looking for. Aspergillus, multiple different species of Aspergillus. They will produce multiple different species of mycotoxins. Then you're looking for Stachybotrys, Chaetotium, Fusarium, Candida. Then the mycotoxin panel, you're looking at 15 different mycotoxins. You got your aflatoxin, ocotoxin, gliotoxin, statrotoxin, ruidins, varicunins. So what are some of the possible scenarios that we could come up with when we're looking at this panel here? Okay, so the mycotoxin is detected, but you don't find any DNA. Well, there's a couple different reasons why this could be done. So you could have like a really like low number of molds, like molds only in like one particular spot in the house, but the mycotoxins are getting into the air ducts and going throughout the house. Um, Mold might be dormant, where it's like not really growing right now because of temperature or humidity. Um, you could have had like a previous person treating the house and it could have killed all the mold, but the mycotoxins are very, very stable, so they're very heat stable, so they can stick around at like over close to 100 degrees Celsius. So they're very hard to degrade. So you really have to have a way for getting rid of the mold and the mycotoxins. Second scenario, the mycotoxin was not detected, but you found DNA. So this could be a sampling issue. Maybe you didn't like check the right part of the house. It could be like a sticky mold, which does not float very well, where mycotoxins have very low molecular weight. Mycotoxin is part of the EMA panel, but so you can like see like the DNA of ketoglobicin, but or the DNA of ketotonium, but we're not measuring the ketoglobicin mycotoxin. So that's a reason why it's good to test for both the mycotoxin and the mold. At present, molds are found, but are not being producing mycotoxins. So if a mold is not being threatened, where there's like bacteria that's attacking it, or different chemicals aren't made, or it's like food source is not being inhibited, it's not going to produce mycotoxins. So molds don't always produce mycotoxins all the time. Okay, how to sample for mycotoxins. So you want to do dust from air conditioner filters. You can samples should be placed in a biohazard bag. You can take dust from your vents. You can like cut out a part of your furnace filter, like a 3x3 segment, like a normal like credit card. Samples should be placed in a biohazard bag. Um, Other suggestions, you can just take out the vacuum dust or dust off top of your shelves or under the refrigerator, anywhere that isn't cleaned as often around the house. Okay, so proprietary treatment here. So the Mold Pros have two different products that they utilize. One's called Surface Guard, and the other one is called Air Guard. And both of these are enzymatic ways of degrading mycotoxins. And the remediation is done in only 3 days. It's much cheaper than a full tear out, and they don't use any harmful chemicals, which is really important for this. A lot of the remediators out there, they're going to use very harmful chemicals, which will like stay inside your furniture or inside the home for a very long time, and I don't recommend that. This is a paper showing how there's different enzymes that are produced by bacteria that can like degrade mycotoxins. So to what the Mold Pro's done is they've like partnered with another lab, which then grows these bacteria, kills the bacteria, but then harvests the enzymes that degrade the mycotoxins. And there's a lot of different classes of enzymes. You have class 1, class 2, class 3, all the way to class 7. And really, there's been research done on like the first like 4 classes. And it's really important to use like a mixture of different classes so you can like metabolize different mycotoxins. Like class 1 really does well for the aflatoxin, class 2 does well for the trichothecenes, where class 3 does well for zearalenolens and ochratoxin. So a mixture of these different classes is what is really good for metabolizing these different ochratoxins. And here's some data that was produced from real-time lab on the Mold Pros process, where they put mycotoxins on different like materials. Here, this is like, and all of the materials had the exact same results here. We can see here on day 0, you see a lot of ochratoxin, some gliotoxin, and then they treated them, and then on day 1, 0 amounts. And the Mold Pros enzyme mixture got rid of all of these mycotoxins. The Mold Pros also have a patented way of getting rid of mold. They use a state-of-the-art filtration process, which is twice as good as HEPA filtration, which captures down to 0.1 microns. This is extremely important to get rid of all the mold so that it's not growing any more mycotoxins. And like I said before, this is a chemical here that's used in a lot of the process, which is this polyphenol. These phenols are very carcinogenic. It's also like really harmful against different like parts of the immune system. So it's really good that this is not being used at all for the Mold Pros process. But this is demolding agent that some other companies use. And since they are like using the enzymes to degrade the mycotoxins, they really don't do a lot of, they do some tear out, but they really do a lot less tear out than a lot of their competitors, which just drastically decreases the cost for the people that are remediating their homes. So, lastly, why are the Mold Pros better? They use quality labs for testing that give you quick turnaround time, so you can get them in and out of your home and get your life back together. Thorough testing throughout the house from the bottom all the way to the top. No harmful chemicals and a lot less tear out. Oh yeah, well, I really will appreciate everybody listening to this mycotoxin and remediation podcast. If anybody has any questions, you can contact the Mold Pros. You can also contact Real Time Lab, which will be happy to help you with your mold questions as well. Oh, thank you very much.